Have you ever experienced a total eclipse of the sun? That magical moment where the moon blocks out the sun, but only just enough to perfectly cover it, whilst still allowing us to see the corona of light and other electromagnetic forces radiating from it. This only happens because the moon diameter is exactly 1/400th the size of the sun's, and it's positioned at exactly 1/400th of the distance between the Earth and the sun. So, when we see it from the surface of the Earth, we are in the only place this can ever be seen, at the only time it could ever happen. What a truly incredible, indeed beautiful coincidence, and how dare we pass it by? Science recognizes the awesome coincidence that this alignment exists only during the time when man has been on the planet, and able to consciously consider this marvel and his own existence. Science also generally acknowledges that we appear privileged indeed to be alive at this time, to bear witness to this phenomenon. But that's all it is, a coincidence. It's the obvious thing to assume. Why should it matter anyway? After all, who's got time to worry about such trivialities when the kids need to be fed and the mortgage, rent and bills need to be paid? We don't have time to indulge such philosophy, and therein lays the shame. If we did, then perhaps we would realize something more than we have. This could be anything ranging from the realization that this simply is not for you, to an epiphany or an insight not experienced before. Who knows? Since science is so keen on method, perhaps it should step outside the box and experience the other obvious alternatives to coincidence. Surely it's equally suggestive that man evolved because of this alignment. And if that were the case, then there are two possibilities to consider. Either sentient man evolved once this particular alignment had developed over time, and the moon drifts away from Earth at a rate of a few inches per year, or it was engineered and maintained specifically to permit man to evolve. If one stops to consider this point, it soon becomes obvious that coincidence never was an option. It overlooks the obvious fact that the coincidence theory has no meaning at all. It fits no picture. And in case you hadn't guessed by now, everything in nature does, if you look with an all-seeing eye. Of course man evolved because of the alignment. It's proven by our existence here at this time. We all know the moon has influence beyond just making the tides ebb and flow on Earth. And we feel it too. But hang on a minute. Was it not the ebb and the flow of the tides that allowed life to arise and leave the water in the first place? Ask a Wiccan or a Druid or any from a wisdom tradition, and after you've stopped laughing at what you think they're all about, they'll tell you about how the moon and the sun have been known for millennia to exert influences which we ignore today, consigned to the realms of astrology. They influence us every second, as do the stars. The moon creates the breath of life on Earth. The sun provides the energy to drive it. Yet we are arrogant or stupid enough to laugh at those who for centuries and millennia have told us that the moon influences our lives in subtle but powerful ways. It moves the oceans. Do you really think it has no effect on your body and its attached emotions? You are mostly water and space. This is not to say that astrology has not been hijacked by more earthly sources for mundane purposes. Of course the sun and the moon exert influence upon us. To deny it would be little short of stupid. It is simply an occulted truth, hidden from those who don't or can't or won't look. Remove the quagmire of distractions that is the New Age religion, one which is as insidious as the other organized religions, of which it is a synthesis, and the wisdom remains. But if this is true, where is the scientific, natural data to prove it? It's there as soon as you look, but rather than trawl through the boring data, allow me to continue my attempt to paint a picture in numbers and words. The moon is 1/81st, 1/81, the mass of the Earth. Bear in mind that science has no idea at all what mass is, by the way. It's a strange brew of density, volume and weight, but they know not from whence it emanates. Earth orbits around the Sun in 366 cycles per year, when viewed from off the planet. Moon orbit around Earth is 27.32 days. When measured against the fixed stars, that's known as the sidereal month. If there were some higher symmetry hiding in these apparently random numbers, how could we get to see it? Well, I found that a good starting point is to reciprocate them and see what happens. When you do that, you find that 1/81 equals 0.0123456789. Now, if you're a mathematician, you will soon spot that in fact the 8 doesn't appear in that sequence if you're using a calculator to do the math. But there is a known simple mathematical proof which, when applied, proves that the 8 is actually there in the sequence. Just accept this for now, but it has everything to do with the calculator and how it's chipped. So, the reciprocal of 81 is the decimal number system. Let me say that again. 1/81 displays the decimal number system 0.123456789. So what? Let's look at another one. 1/366 is 0.002732. And if we put 1/2732, well, go and do it for yourself. You'll find that 366 comes out again. If you're seeing nothing, don't let the numbers block your view. Remove all the decimal points and zeros because they are simply scalar indicators, indications of size, and notice that 2732 and 366 are reciprocal opposites. Earth and Moon are therefore locked in a numerical reciprocal relationship. This is undeniable. In case you are thinking, so what, be aware that this fact, able to be proven by any school child nowadays, is not taught or even known to teachers of astronomy or physics at any level. Moon experts go quake in your shoes, and shame on you for not seeing this. You claim that the mystery of planetary orbit is not understood. Excuse me, did you ever actually look, or did you just learn what they taught you to believe? I wonder, does the casual listener to this indulgence realize what they're listening to here? If you can envisage this, do you realize what you're looking at? One of astronomy's greatest unanswered questions. And you may think that if it were such a shattering revelation, how come we don't know this already? Well, you do now. But a constant underlying theme of my ramblings is that this has, of course, already been noticed long ago. As the number 81, that is 9 squared, appears in many physics fields' equations, Einstein's included, this lends force to the possibility that this number betrays some hidden underlying order. By reciprocating it, you have seen that it generated the base 10, the decimal sequence of numbers, of which 9 is the highest, and remember 9 squared is 81. Why should the relative mass of the Moon, when compared to Earth, compute as a decimal sequence? Indeed, the decimal sequence. I won't begin to try to explain, just accept that it does, and know that the missing 8, if you do the math on your calculator, is actually there. And of course, if you calculate it in binary, you'll find that that's true. Let's return to the Earth-Moon reciprocal lock number, 2732. We know that 366 is the number of days in a sidereal year. So focus now on its reciprocal value, 2732. Remember, the decimal points and zeros are removed because these are only indicators of scale. The numbers work on all scales. What is 2732? Recall that 27.32 is the number of days in a sidereal month. but by sheer coincidence it is also absolute zero. That is minus 273.2 degrees Celsius, the decimal scale, base 10, the lowest temperature in the universe at which all matter ceases to vibrate. It is the 0 point of our reality, as measured on a decimal scale. Also, the mean statistical gestation period of a human child is 273.2 days. That, of course, is 10 sidereal months exactly. And do note that this is a statistical average I'm talking about. The same can be said of the female hormone cycle, the menstrual cycle, where the statistical average cycle is, you've guessed it, 27.3 days. And I wonder if you can add the 2 to that as well. What you see here is the resonance between the orbit of the moon and life on Earth. Now, if you're still confused, simple geometry adds another resonance just to make it a little clearer. Here it is. The ratio of pi to 4 is 1.2732. The moon's acceleration relative to Earth is 0.273 centimeters per second squared. Oh, and the moon is 0.272 Earth radii. But guess what? That measurement has a margin of error which includes 0.2732. So, note how pi, the constant of three-dimensional Euclidean geometry and the key to the circle, as a proportion of 4, reveals the same 2732 constant harmonic. And this harmonic is nothing less than a trans-dimensional constant of the universe. And by that, I mean it's a constant which reveals that point where 4 dimensions becomes 3. If this seems unimportant, consider this. Knowledge of pi and other constants has enabled construction, architecture, and advanced mathematics to flourish so far that it is today arguably the basis of our entire civilization and technology. Imagine what might be achieved by understanding the geometry of our 4-dimensional reality by way of this new constant. Now, imagine what has already been achieved. Most of our known technology is just a dumbed-down spin-off from the more advanced military and space research. We know this. Pi is, of course, a universal constant which applies to all circles and orbits. It's little understood, but I hope to cast a bit more light on it as we progress. It's an irrational number, 3.141, etc., etc. The decimal places go on to infinity. It has no solution. For now, though, realize that 2732 itself is nothing less than a previously undiscovered constant. You may begin to realize why they don't wish it to be highlighted and taught. If you're able to meditate, do so upon these numbers and you may just experience a revelation. And if you're not, learn. You have seen how the series of whole numbers represents the expansion of electromagnetic forces in 4 space, and the reciprocal series its path through 3 space. The former you could regard as digital, and the latter you can regard as analog. The geometry of the number 81 has some connection with mass itself, insofar as it seems to define a ratio between a planet and its moon in 4 space, which encode for sentient life on the parent planet. 81 is 3 to the power 4, incidentally. Yeah. And its reciprocal reflection is the decimal series 0 to 9, including a strange quirk around the apparently missing 8 in the series. Now, I've mentioned this already, but I wonder if the listener can begin to see what the number 8 itself in that series might generate. If this all has something to do with mass, it makes sense to take a look at mass in nature. Matter. What do you think you would find if you do? One of the great questions in physics is, why are there only ever a maximum of 10 isotopes for any element? If you look at the table of elements, there appear to be way in excess of 100. But look closer and you will find that many of these are unstable elements. That is, they only exist momentarily before radiating themselves out of existence. There are 81 stable, naturally existing elements in nature. The periodic table itself shows 83. But if you look at this, 2 of these are not naturally stable. And when you ask a professor why, they simply don't know. They've never thought about it. So, there are 81 elements. The isotope variations, as they decrease in density and therefore mass, can only ever reach the reciprocal of the key number 81. This is why there can only be a maximum of 10 isotopes. If you can visualize this, you have just unified chemistry and physics at the point of source, 0 point. If I could express the picture in words, it would go something like this. 1 over 81 establishes the infinite decimal base upon which 4 space is structured to be self-containing by reciprocation into 3 dimensions. The 81 elements consist of 4 groups, incidentally. 4 groups of 20, each containing 19 elements of one type plus 1 of another. 19 is, of course, what you have left after you subtract 81 from 100. The basic unit is hydrogen, the first element. Its atomic weight is 1. The basic construct of water, and you. Science gives no answer at all concerning its life-sustaining properties, or any of them actually. But if you were to investigate easy water, and that is EZ or EZ water, you'll get a greater insight into where research into this subject has gone. And this is where the picture takes on a further dimension. Now that we have a structure for the matrix that underlies our reality, we can focus a little closer on the miracle that arises from it, sentient life. Now we can start to use words, numbers, and music, or more specifically, the octave, that is 8.